Welcome to another edition of the Simsbury Woman. I'm Barbara O'Connor. This month, in honor of Memorial Day, I wanted to particularly salute the veterans of Simsbury. We're looking forward to the groundbreaking for the new memorial in town. We're so happy that the veterans groups were able to raise the money for that memorial and that they got the steep grant from the state government. But in addition to the veterans who've been working on the memorial, what you may not know is besides the many men from Simsbury who have served, there are also women who have stepped up to protect us and our country. Two of those women are here with me today, April Martin and Allison Ashmore. Thank you so much for coming. I think what might be the best thing to do is if you'd each introduce yourselves a little bit, and then we can talk about your service. Allison, why don't you tell us where you grew up, how you ended up getting in the service, when you served?
I'm Allison Ashmore and grew up here in Terriffill. Fourth generation to own a business in town. And I did graduate from Simsbury High School and entered the U.S. Navy in 1996 and served for 4 years.
Now, where did you serve?
I was stationed in Coronado in San Diego, and I was part of a helicopter community out there. So I was working with helicopters. I was a landing signalsman.
Okay.
And I launched and recovered them on land and on a flight deck of the USS Carl Vinson.
So you were on an aircraft carrier?
I was too, yes. I was on for 6 months. We were deployed.
Where did you deploy?
We left out of San Diego Harbor, and we visited a couple ports, starting in Hong Kong. Then we carried on to Singapore, and then we were in the Persian Gulf for 3 months. Mm-hmm. A few times out there in the 3 months, we would pull into Dubai, which was great. That was a great experience. And then after your 3 months there, you carried on to Australia and Hawaii.
Wow, great.
I know, it was really, really great.
Many places. Now, April, you were in a different part. You were also in the Navy, but
yes,
different.
So I was on my own at a fairly young age, at 15. I grew up on Long Island. I was an emancipated adult, minor, and I graduated third from the top of my class, knew I wanted to go to college, but I also knew what debt was, and I knew the implications of debt. So I quite literally just stood in front of the recruiting offices and kind of did like one of these. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even differentiate the differences between the services, but the Navy sounded good. 3 days later, I was gone.
Now, where did you serve?
So right out of high school, I joined. That was 2000. Right out of boot camp, I was stationed at the embassy in London. Then 9/11 happened, and it was fairly advantageous for the U.S. government to take me out of my cushy station in the embassy and take me to an underground submarine tracking facility, a terminal electronic building that we share with it's a joint maritime facility with the Royal Air Force.
So that was still in England?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And then I became part of the submarine community and then finished my career in Groton, Connecticut. And while at Groton, I fulfilled a few individual augmentees and TEMAD, TAD orders. Had 2 children while I was in the Navy as well. Bought a home in Mystic and finished my career in 2008.
Wow, great. You were just saying that you joined the Navy in large part to go to college. Mm-hmm. What made you join?
I have to admit I wasn't college material. I was more of a hands-on. So I think I had a good friend ahead of me who had gone in and made it sound wonderful.
Yeah.
So I went in. I was in the delayed entry program, so I actually signed up the day after I graduated high school, and then I had to wait 3 months. And I kind of just was looking for another adventure in life to try, and I can't complain. It was the best experience. And I wish I could have done my 20 years, but different situations in life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I ended up coming back here and, fulfilling another career and having my own business. So, but it teaches you a lot. It makes you kind of mature quickly and grow up, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot of you travel and the experiences.
Yeah, and those life lessons definitely.
Yeah.
you carry those on into
Absolutely.
pretty much everything that you do.
What was the most difficult thing about being in the service?
Boot camp on the holidays. I was in during the holidays, so I was in Chicago from November to February. So I think just that one call home, you're allowed 3 minutes. So it's harder to hear your parents' reaction.
Yeah,
maybe?
So for me, it was probably 9/11. And so I joined.
Yeah, I was out before that.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what, this is really great. I'll get in. When was the last time the U.S. was in conflict anyway? So I'll get in, I'll get out. And I was in the chow line when the USS Cole was bombed. And I remember saying to myself, you know, this is not good. Something, you know, you just have that feeling.
Yeah.
Something is going to happen. And so I met my husband in England. He was a submariner as well. And we were engaged to be married. We were supposed to be married September 15th. I'm probably 2 or 3 weeks pregnant with my daughter Ava, not knowing it. And 9/11 happened, and he had to leave. And most of the initial attacks, bombing, they're all done by submarine off the coast. So all that stuff that you're watching on television, that was my husband, and he was gone for 6 months. Actually, he wasn't even my husband yet.
Yeah.
So not knowing that I was pregnant, you know, having to cancel our wedding, not being married, and finally getting a phone call and not really knowing where he was. And I was 8 months pregnant, and I said, listen, the wedding is a done deal. We need to figure something else out because we're going to have a baby girl in April. And we ended up having to get married over the telephone.
Oh, wow.
By proxy. Yeah, so I'm in a maternity uniform. I'm in my commanding officer's office, and I signed a piece of paper. I faxed it to the courthouse in Texas. Because, of course, Texas, which my husband was a native of, or native to, honors marriage by proxy, of course. So, signed the paperwork and said I do over the phone. And a few days later, I was sailing back over the pond.
Quite a story to tell your children someday.
Right, exactly.
When they're old enough to understand what you're going. That had to be incredibly stressful to not know what was going on with him.
It was horrible. And you know, if you think about it, I was in a very southern part of England, universal health care. I had no family. I was living in the barracks for the first 6 to 7 months. And the weather didn't help. You know, the lack of, like, Taco Bell didn't help.
Yes, those cravings for pregnancy. I remember those. Yes,
for fast food. But yeah, it was very tough. And then, you know, we were just kind of thrust into this world where my initial thoughts were that I was going to be going to college, and you don't go to college during wartime.
No.
It's seemingly insurmountable.
I would think that your experience prior to 9/11 would be
Totally
different from April's. Since even though you were in the Middle East,
there's always some operations going on over there. And depending, you know, I was top secret clearance, so you know, you're always seeing things. But anyways, there's always some type of conflict. I feel.
What would you say was the best thing that happened?
What was the best thing? I just having the experience of the military provided me to just see other places, visit, and learning, like, you know, at my age then, I was responsible for $1 million aircrafts and 7 lives, you know, pilots and aircrew people. So I think that was, you know, back then you thought you were like, you know, a female on the flight deck, like owning it, you know, like
so
you're
empowering.
Yeah, and you're like, you thought you were kind of showing off, but doing your job. But now I sit here and I talk about it, and I'm like, wow, that's a very high-end job.
It almost seems like a dream.
Yeah, exactly,
like
right.
It was something that I dreamt that happened a long time ago.
Yes,
it was so intense and so just profound. Just being part of something so much bigger than you.
Yeah.
Now, did you find a lot of camaraderie with the other women who were in the service with you? Did you, feel, or was it a kind of the same with everybody that, your group,
Well, for
like a
me,
family,
I think
yeah.
there were, so being on the submarine base as I was, women are not allowed on submarines. So I think I was like one of 10 women on that whole base. It was probably different because women are allowed on
and the
aircraft
carriers and stuff,
So you probably had a little more exposure.
You definitely are in small quarters with a lot of people, but I think everybody is on the same mental wave, you hope, but for the most part, with my experience, it was great. Everything was positive. They have gym facilities on there. You're working 7 hours a day, 7 hours a week, 18-hour days, but it becomes like your routine. So I think for the most part, we all work together.
You have to.
Yeah, you're in this birthing area where you sleep, and you learn to, you have responsibilities. So certain women are cleaning up certain days, and but yeah, for the most part, it was great. Like my chief was a female, and she was like a mother figure for 6 months, and if I had a problem or just needed to talk, she was there. So I think that you have that female interaction. So, but I also grew up with 2 older brothers. That made me a little tough.
Yeah.
So I could work with 20 guys and be the only female and feel
Maybe even prefer
superior.
it at times. It's the ideal working situation.
Sometimes
You
that,
definitely have to
yes.
have that mentality. You have to be able to, roll with it and be able to joke, but also be able to work with that many males too.
Yeah, and when you think, like you were saying, the responsibilities you had as a, 18, 19-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
And people's lives are in your hands. It's not,
Now it's like,
not
wow,
something-
then it's like, I got this, I can handle this. But you have to be very alert too, You have to make sure you're bringing in the helicopter at the right angle. So it was great. It was great.
How do you feel about the idea of women in more combat situations? Do you think that?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't see any.
I mean, I think it's a choice that you make,
Yeah.
and if you make the choice, I think we see firsthand, and we've lived it, that women are very capable.
If you have the mentality, the strong mentality for such a physical position, I think you can handle it. I think you
Were
can do it.
were the physical challenges difficult?
Like our PTs, like our work, not. I don't think so. I think it'd be.
particular.
I think the standards could be a little stronger.
Yeah, I almost resented the fact that we had slight kind of variations to like our run times.
Oh,
or
with the
push
females,
up. I think being pregnant was hard only because you have 6 weeks to get back into full shape. So that was a little tough. But I always wanted to just be equal in that sense.
Okay.
Now, you were in the service there for 8 years. Did being a mom present any unique challenges for you while you were?
Yeah, but nothing that's unique that didn't, carry over in the corporate world. I think, if anything, corporate America is more demanding of my time, and a little less cognizant of that work-life balance.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, it's something that I typically go back to fairly often, where maybe it's just that regimented schedule. The watch bill is always there. You can plan around it. Whereas in corporate America, you're working late, you have board meetings, you have to travel, and these things, they have to be done. And I always thought that the Navy was more accommodating to just about any, because like you said before, they're involved not only in your professional life, but also your personal life. So your command master chief, your officer in charge, what have you, they know about pretty much everything that's going on in your life. And they counsel you on just about anything, and you can tell them anything. So maybe that's why they just have a certain...
That's great. It's such a more welcoming
It is.
feeling in the military than what I would expect not having not having served.
Being pregnant in the UK by myself, I mean, and we had just gone to war. I had no idea what was happening. I actually hid my pregnancy for 2 months because I was so afraid of what was going to happen, and I wanted to be part of that frontline approach. I wanted to be at GQ. I wanted to understand how I could help. But I remember standing watch with an M16 and just, fearing that I was going to get sick, and it was my first child, and then my mom wasn't around, and so, there was some cognitive dissonance there. But the ombudsman, our Master Chief's wife, she invited me over for dinner 3 nights a week.
Oh,
she took me to my appointments. I remember she would give me little tips, eat ginger and drink ginger ale if you're not feeling well, and it was so very natural.
Now, you're also a mom. Would you encourage your children to go into the service?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's actually a conversation these days. Yeah. So absolutely.
Because you have a son. Would you encourage, you have both daughters and sons?
Yes, I have 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. And I think my daughter really digs the fact that her mom is a veteran, especially we're closing on our home and everyone looks to my husband who's signing the VA loan. My daughter will say, no, it's not him, it's her.
That's great. She's so proud of you.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that she could totally do. And I look at some of our youth today and I think to myself, wow.
Yeah.
3 months of boot camp would get you right where you need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So would you encourage your son to?
Yes, actually. I would put him in like JROTC and start him now, because what I regret is not doing that when I was kind of at the bottom. And you really have to work hard to get your way up, and you get the jobs you don't want to do for 90 days here and there. And I think with that, you get a little more leadership. You can grow your independence. You can try out for the academy. So it's just a good experience having parents that are veterans who maybe, if they're in my situation or they were officers, to have that guidance, because it will really motivate the kid a little more, maybe, to see it in that aspect.
I think it's so wonderful that your children are proud of you.
Yes.
My dad, as I said, was a World War II vet, but he never talked about his experiences when I was growing up. They just didn't do that.
Yeah.
And then my contemporaries were Vietnam vets, and that was such a difficult time. And when they came back from their service, they were often not treated with respect and more hid that they had been in the service. How did your returns to civilian life go? Did you have any
hard.
problems?
I missed it.
Oh, you missed it rather
than the military, But they debrief you when you do to get discharged, at least in my experience, and they give you terminology. They give you ways, like a little on how to interview when you're going in to corporate. I was in corporate too for a little while, but it's a big adjustment. 4 years, 2 years, 20 years, 10 years. So I think you go through such intense training to learn it, and then it becomes like your mentality, your life. And then when you come out of it, you have to learn all over. You have to relearn how to really learn the terminology, interview properly, stuff like that, I believe. Write a resume.
Did you get good skills that you could take into the corporate world? Or?
I did. So I was predominantly I was a writer, and I'm in communications today, so it was easy for me to translate my skills. But there were soft skills that I was a little hesitant. Yes, I want to talk about leadership, but do I want to sound like I'm a little overbearing? I don't want, so you're always trying to maintain this kind of homeostasis. And I work for travelers, and they were amazing. Just kind of saying, okay, so this is what you did, this is how it translates, and this is a perfect position that for you. Great. They have a tremendous military outreach, but at first. It was really hard. I was afraid that people would perceive my experience as being a negative, especially when I got out. There was a lot of media coverage on PTSD, affecting women, and you know, certain things are happening because women have children and families, and you know, it was definitely in the spotlight, and I was just very afraid that I was going to kind of be clumped into that.
Yeah. But fortunately, you both had very good experiences. So
It was.
You know, it was interesting as I was trying to find female vets here in Simsbury. There doesn't seem to be many people who are part of the traditional veterans organizations. And it's interesting that you're both in the Navy, because I did talk on the phone to a World War II female vet who was a WAVE, but she was not comfortable coming to talk tonight. Do you think that there's any particular reason why the female veterans are not part of the organizations, or is it just in your cases where you both have careers and families, it's like something's got to give. You can't do everything.
You know, I was part of the VFW for a while, or the Legion rather, and I tried, and aside from the parades and, you know, some wreath layings, I just don't have the time. I just finished my MBA, and it's all on the GI Bill. So the moment I got in 2008, that's when I started college.
Terrific.
Right. So it was like I have college. I have 3 children. My youngest is 4, and it's, you know, I'm barely keeping my head above water there. And, you know, I'd love to sit here at Hall and talk about, you know, projects and from 7 to 9 p.m. But those nights I come home and my whole family's emaciated on the floor waiting for me to cook them dinner. So, you know, aside from that, I don't think there's really any negative, you know.
It's just, just not, you know, it could also be your ages too. That at some point you might want that camaraderie, and it just isn't working right now. Do you either of you like go to the high schools, or are you involved in any recruiting aspect for the military?
No, I did in elementary school. They would honor veterans, so I would go to that and watch like the kids do you know, songs and talk about it. That's a tearjerker.
I go at Squadron Line every year. And my son, he spoke at the last one about his mom and how tough she was. And I wore mascara that day. I had black all over just my blouse even. And it's very touching.
What I do though is I am associated with the VA in Newington every now and then, and when I do go in, I do see a lot of people that, you know, are there for like physical therapy and for maybe lost limbs, and I feel like when I'm there in the moment, what can I do to help to do more? So I think as my son is getting older and in high school, that's something we can visit. Like, you know, I think you can earn, like, it's not even about earning credits, but like showing him that, getting there, driving somebody to an appointment, like what can I do on my time that I'm not utilizing to help more of an injured veteran? That's what. And I did do a run actually with a gentleman who did lose both of his legs. He was a double leg amputee. So I do the Cigna run for Disney every January. So his name was Cedric King, and I did the half marathon with him, and he just did the Boston Whole 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful. So so that's a little bit too, you know, with through Cigna, I do a lot of the Achilles runs for anybody with an injury. It doesn't even have to be a veteran. So I take my time in and help, you know, guide anybody with a disability through that.
So even if you're not in active service now, you still feel that connection of wanting to be part of the community
to help?
And doing that. And that's a terrific example to be setting for your children, military or not, that, you know, you give back to the community. And obviously you both feel that you got quite a lot out of your service.
I wouldn't be the woman I am today without that experience, for sure.
That sounds wonderful. It's a really neat thing to do. Yeah. I am so happy to have had this conversation with both of you, and that I had known Allie a little bit more before, but not so much about this part of her life, and it's been fascinating meeting you, and this was a wonderful way to do it. There was another reason I wanted to talk about veterans in Simsbury. Last year I lost my dad, July 1st, and he was a World War II veteran who was quite a character about it. One of the things he, as I mentioned before, never talked about it, never wanted any additional benefits from the government other than some health issues for a wound that he got during the service. But he always wore what he called his pity hat, which was the World War II veteran hat with his insignia on it. And toward the end of his life, when I'd be taking him out, he would have people coming up to him, thanking him for his service, congratulating him and all that. And at one point, he lost his wedding ring, and we found it again in the ShopRite parking lot. Somebody turned it in, so he had to get it resized.
I remember you telling me
we
this.
went to the jewelry store, and they put a guard on it for him, and he had his pity hat on, and he says to the young woman who was helping him, "What do I owe you?" And she said, "Oh, nothing, sir, we're glad to do it," and all that. And as we're walking out, he whispers to me, "Gets them every time." Pay for everything.
That's awesome.
But he never was in any of the parades, except when we got up here. And the first year that, in 2012, I got him into the parade, kicking and screaming. He didn't want any part of it. Nobody knows me. And we just said to him, "Smile and wave, Dad, smile and wave." So at the end of the parade, we go to pick him up, and his first thing he says to me and my husband is, "So, you think they'll want me next year too?" And then he did it in 2013, but unfortunately he could not participate in 2014. But McLean had a ceremony, and he went. I took him out to it, and he had on his hat, and he was saluting.
Yes,
he was there. He had a. He was very much appreciative, and they honor the vets there. So I wanted to really, with this show, honor the vets of my father's era, the ones who are gone, especially those we have lost, and honor you too. And I'm so thrilled you could be with me. Thank you all today for joining us. We'll hope to see you soon on the next Simsbury Woman. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.